The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
Three designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Charlie McCarran.
I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
And I'm Ananda Gunaratne.
And this is our wrap-up episode for the series on storytelling games. And we played 3 different storytelling games. We had Once Upon a Time, Wing It, and In This World. All 3 pretty different storytelling experiences, but I think they share the common thread of, like, we are really generating original stories in each of them.
A lot of expression of creativity, which is, I think, the key for this genre.
Yeah. And as I kind of mentioned in the first episode, we're keeping it separate from RPG-style stories, and I think, Ananda, you made a good distinction that we're the narrators, not the characters.
Right,
kinda.
yeah. It is a lot of it is a matter of perspective. Also, you have more authorial fiat. You aren't dependent on dice to make decisions. Players just decide that things happen, and they happen.
Mm-hmm.
Very little randomization because, like, even in Once Upon a Time, even though you have a randomly drawn deck of cards, you are deciding to play something, and there's not a random result because of that choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no conflict resolution mechanism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Unlike an RPG.
And I think it's the 3 games we picked worked pretty well to exemplify, like, 3 different styles where Wing It is like you're telling a story yourself and you're competing kind of for the judge. The funniest story wins, kind of. And in Once Upon a Time, you're working together to tell a collaborative story, but there is still kind of a winner, whoever gets to their ending of the story, which is very interesting. And then in this world, we are just fully collaborating to tell the story.
We're all winners because we've created all these worlds together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could vote on who started the best world, but that seems weird.
No, that
would ruin it.
That would feel weird.
Yep.
I think my world was best because...
Yeah.
Also, you're having the other people help you build the world.
Right,
so.
yeah.
Yep.
So they just try to undermine you, and that's not the nature of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of is the question I want to pose to you guys, too. Is like, where are there any other types of storytelling game formats?
I mean, besides RPGs.
RPGs.
So just to help us define it a little bit, we're looking for games that really access your creativity and telling a story of what's happening, right? Like, it's not walking through a pre-made adventure, or because there's a lot of different, like, story games, but they all kind of flex it a little bit differently in terms of mechanics or theme.
Yeah, it's very focused on the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I'm trying to imagine like a team storytelling game, for example, or I don't know.
I mean, my favorite storytelling game that is more of a folk game, as Ananda would say, is the say one word at a time, and you create a story one word at a time.
Exquisite Corpse.
It's not. I just know this is a game.
Okay.
Oh yeah. But it's very fast paced, right?
It's very fast paced.
It's like an improv exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess the genre of improv exercises would probably qualify here.
Yeah.
Improv in general?
Yeah.
Just like
its own thing. Yeah. That's a good point. Thank you, improvers, out there for listening to our podcast.
If improvers are listening, like, definitely try In This World. I would.
Oh yeah,
that's such a good experience. Trying to, if you didn't listen to that episode, we're making a world together, but there's specific boundaries on like how you make
a very specific structure. And I think that could even lend itself to improv games in general because they all have a semi-structure, but this is much more structured than those are. So that might be an interesting riff. But
yeah, one thing that I noticed about these last 3 episodes is I got the feeling that we talked a lot more about what happened in the game than usual, which
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Well, we were also able to remember a lot more, which I think is because narrative is sort of built into people. Like if we recognize something as a story, it's much easier for us to remember.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we are sort of geared to see stories and things. So one of the advantages of storytelling games is that they are a lot more memorable.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, if you're trying to create memories or if you're trying to create, bonds with people, if you're trying to have like hey, it's a work thing and we're trying to make a thing together and, we did an escape room and that was fine. But now we just need to like do something else. Like this would actually like, oh, wow, you get to in each other's heads and you work with each other. And it's a very collaborative experience. I think theater groups really need to play this game together so they can actually get on the same page with each other because, man, oof.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a goal of any designer should be to, I think about this a lot, like, what's the story someone tells after they play your game? And sometimes, like, you do an abstract game, but there's, going back to chess, like, I think each game does create this weird story. Like, I was playing last night, and then I woke up thinking about like that. That time when they pushed their pawn all the way down the board, and so like even in an abstract game, creating a story is possible and a really good thing.
So having games that have room for those stories to come out is really important.
And I think maybe it's about in non-story games, like the dynamics shifts that happen. Like what are the key peak points and versus like. Oh, this turn I turned one cube in for this.
Yes.
And this turn it was kind of the same. Oh, wait, and this turn was actually kind of the same.
Yeah, having really outstanding, strange things happen, or unusual things happen. I mean, I can think of a few examples from non-story games myself. I remember winning as the Bene Gesserit as Dune once with the prediction, and then manipulating people to get it to to go off on like turn 7 or 8. That was very memorable because that doesn't happen very much.
Yeah.
I remember, in Heroescape, I remember demolishing 2 armies with my vampire hero by himself.
Oh wow!
Because he's very mobile, so he can stay away from enemy retaliation. He just sort of went back and forth, and they couldn't do anything about it. Very memorable.
Yeah. And I think it's a sign that the theme is really tied into the mechanics too, because like those examples, you were able to say it in terms of the theme.
Right.
And like, I was just thinking of Galaxy Trucker, the first game I played.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my ship getting torn apart in the middle when, like this, someone planted a bomb on the ship and it blew in half. So yeah, it helps if your theme and mechanics are really tied together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in these games, in these storytelling games, it's pretty much all theme, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the theme is the game.
Well, the mechanics are really oration, and like being able to practice that skill is also not really well done, even in RPGs where you are dependent on dice for conflict resolution or for like, all right, roll d20, they hit, okay, you can take 12 damage, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's like, I fought a beholder, and then the sword, I cut off one of its eyes, and it went wriggling around. Like, oh, wow, that's way more interesting than I rolled the d20 and got to 12 damage.
Yeah, giving a lot of character to each thing, like each card or whatever. I was thinking about to kind of switch gears. These games had varying levels of information supplied by the designer or publisher.
Sure.
Like Wing It has a lot of detailed like scenario that you're thinking about, which I think makes sense for like a little bit lighter party game. All the way to In This World on the other end that doesn't give you hardly anything.
Gives you the book.
Your imagination.
Yeah.
And I have been like internally struggling with this with a few games where I've talked to publishers and they're like, oh, there's too much creativity required for us to publish this game.
Yeah.
And it's like, hurts my heart a little bit because I know that the most fun version of the game is where people are making these like elaborate stories in their head, for example. But
or songs.
Yeah, or songs. Yeah, that's one of the. Yeah, Trevor got to play test. I'm working on a music storytelling game, and Ananda actually did too. But Trevor got to play the Mad Libs version, whereas Ananda played. We were very loosey goosey, making up the story and song, and I don't know. Yeah, I think the making up this one is probably more memorable in the end. So I don't know.
You know, it's interesting because Mad Lib style is more like Once Upon a Time, then, right? Because you have these specific words you're supposed to say.
It's sort of like Mad Libs in reverse.
I was just thinking,
It's
it's reverse. It's the as you talked about, the positive and negative space,
and then the thing happens. So normally Mad Libs, it's provided by the publisher, the rest of the story, and the person just frog.
You fill in the words.
Yeah.
But here
Running.
you have the words and you have to fill in the rest of the story.
Yeah,
Right,
so it's
right.
inverted Mad Libs. We solved it.
Yeah, and so maybe one thought I had with this music adventure game, not to go down this rabbit hole, but I think I might try a progression of like start Mad Libs so people understand, like who are more nervous about making up a song on the spot.
Oh yeah,
I can just have most of the lyrics written.
just shout a word.
And just say a word.
Yeah.
And then, but as people progress into advanced mode, maybe you go
You cut out more and more of the pre-made lyrics.
and go more towards Once Upon a Time or something.
Cat.
Yeah. Go. Because it does help, like, even in this world, we don't start from scratch. Like, we have those 12 cards to look at in front of us.
Right.
Which we made up.
Which we made up.
We did start from scratch, but we had
were
different
told-
phases where
Yeah.
we made up the structure of what we created.
Yeah. We were given the easy job of just like
The blueprints.
tell us something about our topic, which was games.
Yeah.
Like go through you don't have to think very hard about like,
Oh yeah, these things are true.
these things are true.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
No creativity in the beginning parts.
Right.
Just what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Then what are things about that thing you want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, we want to talk about it, so hopefully we know something about it.
Yeah. That was the thing within this world. I didn't know when it was going to end. I thought we were actually going to like, we've made these worlds. Okay, now play
One
this.
level deeper.
Play the game in these worlds. It's like, oh no, wait, it's done. We just made the.
We just made the worlds.
But that's the cool part. And even
Yeah.
in the rules, I think they said something about like,
I mean,
now everyone is going to take this world with them in their head, and they might think of a book.
Right.
To,
Or-
yeah. Next step is outlining the plot for your
Yeah.
book.
Yep.
And then you write the book, and then you publish it, and then you market it, and then
Yeah. So I talked about my storytelling game. Do you guys have storytelling games that you want to make now that you've?
Well, okay, so maybe this is sort of my takeaway. I'll use it as my takeaway anyway. I've been interested in making a memory game now for a while, ever since I played Mamma Mia, the game about making pizzas, which is quite good.
Mm-hmm.
I do like pizza.
And I also played Wilmot's Warehouse, which is a memory game where organization is a big aspect of it. So I was thinking, okay, is there something I can do with organization and memory? But thinking about storytelling and how memorable stories are in games, I'm wondering if there's something that could be done there with a memory game that uses storytelling as the mechanic to help people keep track of things instead of using organization.
Oh, interesting. Or just
I like
visual
that.
memory. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is an actual mnemonic technique,
Right.
which is to tell a story in your head to keep track of a sequence of things.
Right.
Yeah. The Memory Palace.
the Memory
Also,
Palace.
Memory
yeah, where
Palace.
Yeah,
you
Memory
create
Palace.
Different rooms and what
Store things
objects
in different
are-
places.
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah, so I'm imagining sort of a co-op memory game based on storytelling, where you're trying to tell a story that will help you remember a sequence of objects.
kind of like Simon Says, but very different.
Yes.
Where you remember the lights that
Yeah.
say flash.
Yes, very different.
Very different.
There's have you guys played When I Dream again?
I have not.
I've heard of that.
So that's an interesting one. There's one piece of it that reminds me of that. In general, though, the game is one person is blindfolded, and people are getting that person to guess what the secret word is, and half the people are trying to lie and get them to guess the wrong word. But the person who's blindfolded, then after they guess as many words as they can, they have to retell the story of their dream by connecting the dots between all the words.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a cool memory exercise. And it's really funny watching it because they've gotten maybe like half of the words right, but they're making this story for the words they even got wrong in that game. But yeah.
Weird. I don't know. I think for me in storytelling design, I may try to incorporate this in an RPG. And not like necessarily in this world or The Quiet Year or anything like that, but where it is more of that first-person perspective, but maybe they're telling a story, or maybe the player is telling a story about how something happened, but then still having some light mechanics to it to help give it structure, kind of like Once Upon a Time or something like that, where there could be a light set collection or resource management thing going on. But I'll need to think about that a little bit more. Yeah. That was one major takeaway I had, is if you are combining mechanics of a game with storytelling narrative, you don't want the mechanics to be too complicated, because then that will start to fight against the storytelling freedom.
Yeah.
You really want to have that freedom with storytelling so you can like swerve it a little bit more to match with your mechanics, but you don't want the mechanics to be the sole judge of the story, because that's not creativity anymore. That's just saying what's in front of you, which some people may appreciate, but
yeah. And like maybe we'll get into it more if we talk about RPGs, but
that
is one major hurdle for me with like D&D, is that I sort of want it to either be the mechanics are the focus or the story is the focus, and I think that's a tension with these kind of games.
I also feel like traditional RPGs with dice, depending on how simulationist they are, I feel like the mechanics, especially the combat mechanics, get in the way of the story.
It's interesting. It depends on the players, obviously, the dungeon master, GM, whatever it is. But how the combat happens, how the combat is narrated, how different things are interacted with, you can get very specific with it, and it can actually provide you with enough structure to be creative without being overwriting. The only hard parts are when you're doing conversations with people and you're trying to persuade someone of something, and you're not good at doing that as a person, but you roll really well, and maybe you're a bard or a paladin or something and have a high charisma. And it's just like, oh, well, I rolled a 20, but I just said do it. And they did it. And it's like, what? That feels like, can you just just a little bit more? Just give me something. But, it's tough. Your fantasy world, right? You're playing a character you wish you could be.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
And I think Once Upon a Time is good for everyone to play, to see how a game can have these fuzzy rules a little bit, where it's like social pressure will make you want to tell a good story.
Right.
And not just like burn through your hand to win by playing all your cards really fast. Like, yeah. You want it to be a fun experience.
I had a conflict with a duck. I won, and now I'm cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's to me how sometimes, like, if you're playing an RPG and it's like, oh, we have to win.
Min-maxing and,
versus, like, just tell a good story together. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there are definitely systems out there that are more story-focused. I think Fate Core is one of them. There's a lot of systems beyond D&D. D&D just happens to be the front and center. Gets the most movies made about it, all that.
Well, we will have to do that as a series sometime to compare and contrast all the different types of RPGs.
So in all reality, it could be its own podcast even.
I'm sure. But, and that would be Trevor's
me talking about myself.
Podcast.
All right, so here we are talking about RPGs.
I do wonder with Once Upon a Time, I mean, what if it was a co-op game? Like if everyone just needed to get rid of all of their cards And instead of an ending, each person has like some important plot points.
An act card where it's the end of an act.
Or maybe like one person has
sure.
an ending like the Crew style, right? I mean, what if you combined Once Upon a Time with the Crew?
Once Upon a Crew.
I like that idea.
Crew time.
I want to play that. So you should design it.
Okay.
Cool.
Once Upon a Crew time.
Yeah. Oh, I really enjoyed this series.
Yeah.
Storytelling
It
games.
was very different from what we've done in the past, but I think it's actually getting to be also more of an important genre in the gaming world because there are more people looking for games like this that are low mechanics, easy to get into, maybe some turn-based elements to them, but like that ease to get into and you're still making memorable moments.
Yeah.
I think that's a really key point for like publishers or
Yeah. It feels like a lot of our episodes we've been talking about mechanics.
Yeah. Which is kind of the point.
Which naturally we gravitate towards. But yeah, it's nice to take a step back and think about this theme and the story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. I see Ananda writing something. Do you have a thought?
No, I'm just making a note of Once Upon a Time meets the Crew.
Okay, good.
As a game idea.
Excellent. Well, with that, let's get off to designing more games and
more games,
more stories. And good luck to you if you are designing a story game. Let us know.
Please let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, we will see you next time for our next series to be announced.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.